Good morning and welcome. And if you're in Canada, happy Family Day, depending on where you are. And if you're in the U.S., happy President's Day, I believe. So no matter where you are, there's some sort of quasi-holiday today, and we're doing the show anyway because that's just how we roll. So I'm going to start the show today with a clip from one of my favorite car movies. If you're not familiar with it, it's Ford versus Ferrari. And before I do that, I wanted to share some details on a survey, but I'll do that after the video. So here we go.
Hey, take it easy on it today, bud. All right. Paragraph 15.4, Section 2B of the SCCA standard dictates all AF class cars must have minimum trunk space of 20 inches by 12 inches by 6 inches. Your trunk doesn't close. Ergo, car fails standard.
Wait.
Well, ergo, car is disqualified from said class.
Can I ask you a question? When you were in this report, did you think, when I grow up, I want to go to the fabled Willow Springs Raceway and I want to enforce paragraph 15.4, section 2B of the SEC regulations on luggage capacity?
All right. That said, I'm ruling you and your team disqualified from the race.
Well, if it isn't Lance Rementlow.
Shelby?
How you doing, Lance?
Oh, there's Lance. Allow me to introduce Dieter Voss, one of Bruno's Porsche.
Oh, I know all about Mr. Voss. You're having a hell of a season without a part, sir.
Seeing results for your Carbahn too.
Thank you.
Your guy Miles is impressive.
Oh, you following Miles?
Oh yeah.
Well, he was a USAC road racing champion in '61. He won the Pikes Peak Hill Climb. He was SCCA C-Class champion 3 years in a row. And this piece of shit MG he built himself.
We heard he's difficult.
What, Ken? No, Ken's a puppy dog. Hey, Lance, tell the man you raced with this Ken.
I've driven more behind him than against him.
Well, Brumos is looking for a driver for our number 2 car at Sebring.
Is that right?
I think your guy Miles can make great.
Oh, well, check.
Jim, is he putting his bloody carry-all in your trunk?
Jim, excuse me a moment.
Be honest, Ken was born for secrets.
Nothing in there about my trunk and your lovely little portmanteau.
We're holding the 62 edition of the SCCA.
You can stick this bloody sticker with some.
Hey, Phil. Hey, what seems to be the problem?
Is the bill here? Is it
It's
a
not
lot?
to spec.
He didn't mean that.
Oh, yes, he does.
No,
Yes, he
really.
does. Yes, no, he really does think the bill is a.
Chilling.
I'm just doing my job here.
Phil, in my experience, there is, listen to me, something like this, there's always a middle ground. All right, now Ken's out of line.
And I'm just
All
doing my job.
I understand you are. You know how he gets on race day. Do you know that? All right, but you're not going to DQ us over a trunk.
Happy Bill!
So that was a quick clip. If you haven't watched the movie, there's more entertainment in this movie. If you're not a fan of racing, obviously it's a good movie for you. So let's first of all, before I do the intro, I just wanted to share a survey. So I was doing a survey before the show, and I did a survey on, and I got Chris Mack joining too. So you know, from Steve Dinan's new shop. Anyway, so I did a survey, and the survey was, what inspired you to be a fan of cars and racing and speed and everything that goes fast? And these were the thing. I did have one old school one, which was Smokey and the Bandit on this survey that I didn't include, but I thought that was kind of old school since most of the people in it are dead. But this was definitely an interesting thing. And welcome, Chris. So I'm going to start with the survey. And Chris, I want to introduce you to Ryan and Brandi, but I'll go over that in a minute. So Chris runs Steve Dinan's new shop. He has been on a past episode, so I'm sure he has some thoughts on racing and racers. All right, I'm going to go ahead with the video. Intro coming now. Here we go. And good morning.
Life is about connection. having a support system to lean on, and roads to endless possibility. At every turn, guiding the way, we are building the connections that move you.
One of the really nice things about Larry, one of the reasons that we brought him to our dealership, is he's so very much aligned with our core values. So with our brand, which is thoughtful and professional service. And because that alignment really worked out well, because he was so committed to the success of others, we really knew that he was the right person to spend time with our sales team, with our managers and each sales consultant. And we're just really thrilled to have a partnership with him. And so we thank him.
How do you adventure? Is it fast? Is it free? Is it clear? Is it rugged? Is it remote? For your next adventure, trust MotorClothes for buying, selling, trading, and protecting all of your motorized assets. Powered by Diskloz Dealership Management Dashboard, your all-in-one DMS, CRM, menu, lead gen, inventory, staff, client, and deal management solution. Diskloz DMD, like a DMS, only better. Mention promo code AutoHub 2025 to get special pricing, including waive setup costs, no contract, and your first month's free.
Car dealers often underestimate the power of social media. Are you wondering why my face is plastered in your newsfeed? Are you a GM, dealer principal, or a manager at a car dealership wondering why you see me all the time on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, and all over social media? Well, that didn't happen by chance. I target car dealers that are in-market shoppers for social media services, and I'm going to do the exact same thing for you so that you target in-market shoppers for your brand of customers that purchase your vehicles. During my Viato days, helping car dealers appraise and price cars, everyone was asking me, what do I do on social media? What do I do with Facebook, Instagram, TikTok? And this was back in 2016. So here we are 10 years later. I started a company, became an entrepreneur, and now I help car dealers. They either outsource their social media needs to us, or we have a training and education center where we can teach all of your employees how to do social media in-house. 90% of consumers actually follow a business on Instagram. The average adult sits on TikTok for 2 hours a day in the rabbit hole. To learn more information about it or to get a demo from one of my sales associates, click the link below. We would absolutely love to help you.
Good morning and welcome. So we have a wide array of guests today. I'm going to start with the first person who showed up, which is actually the inspiration for the show, Mr. Ryan. And Ryan is actually a car racer himself. I heard he was at a racetrack last week doing some volunteer work. So Ryan, maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself, and more importantly, how did you get into car racing? Like, that's an aspirational thing for a lot of young men and women, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, I've been a huge car guy my whole life. I loved everything with four wheels and a motor. It was something that I always wanted to do, always wanted to be a part of. I tried every sport, and I learned really quickly that they all do share one common position, and that's bench. I was just very, very uncoordinated, very bored during it. And, you know, I remember my dad tossing NASCAR on TV and, you know, watching that with him. I remember waking up at 6 a.m. to watch, you know, the early morning shows on Speed Channel. It's just something I always liked. And, you know, when I found out, you know, when I was about 10 years old that, you know, kids could race, that really changed the game. Been able to continue moving up the ladder, you know, chasing the dream. I moved to Charlotte from Los Angeles when I was 17 years old and haven't looked back. And today, you know, we're racing in Xfinity, raced over in Europe last year, and finalizing a deal right now that isn't announced yet, but super excited to get it out in the coming weeks. And just super excited for the times ahead.
Thanks very much. So, Chris, I know you don't work at all with people who want to go fast. Maybe you can talk a little bit about what you do and how you make people go faster in vehicles of all types.
Yeah, so Chris MacNaughton, I've been with Steve Dinan, who started Dinan Engineering. Now this is my 23rd year with him. So I started in this business of high performance for BMWs and tuning at 19 years old, and I just turned 43. So I've been doing this a long time. We also race in IMSA. So we have 2 race cars right now that we race in IMSA, the 39 and the 93 with Peregrine Racing and Carbahn. So yeah, I mean, I got started. My first car was a '65 Chevelle, and had a V8 in there. But I think the first race that I've ever went to in my whole life was actually a drag boat race back when I was just a little kid. And I think that loud engines and stuff, alcohol running engines back then is probably what got me excited about going fast. Watching boats cruising along the water with absolutely no control, but. Now we can drive fast things with a little more control. So, but yeah, we take cars right now. We have cars that build up to close to 1,000 horsepower with a full matching warranty, and so we have guys that like to go fast, and that's my job.
Fantastic. And we have Brandi on. She's one of the sponsors of the show. I heard she had a little bit of a penchant for speed, so maybe she could share her thoughts.
Yes, just a smidgen. First off, I'm super excited for this panel. I am more so intending to be a fly on the wall because I'm really looking forward to everybody's responses. I have been in auto and asset financing since I was 18, so 27 years to put a number on it as well, Chris. And in the last 4 years, I've taken some time to build a new DMS with a new third-party selling site. So motoclose.com is just coming to the market to advertise all motorized assets. And it's all powered by our DMD, which is like a DMS, only better, and that's called Diskloz. And yes, I absolutely wanted to race cars. I didn't care at what level. I remember early stage finance. I was moving to Vancouver, and my boss wanted me to stay here in Edmonton. And I actually, part of my negotiations was I told him, if you get a car, get your mechanic shop to fix it up, branded the dealership name, and I can race it out at the local track, I would absolutely stay. So totally negotiating in on that. But yeah, super excited to hear what you guys have to say.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
So we talked a little bit about the survey that I did earlier, and I was curious as to what movies inspired people. And we were talking before the call. I was talking with Ryan about Shakiro Honda and how he got into the automotive industry, talking about what inspired him, which I think was the smell of oil on the ground from a car when he was a kid. And I was talking a little bit about Nissan and Honda just because that doesn't look like that merger's going anywhere. But it was interesting just because of that brand of cars was inspired by a guy who liked to race cars, probably not the first. So Ryan, obviously you are passionate about cars and you wanted to get into racing. What did your parents say when you told them that? Like, what was the deal there? I'm just curious.
I mean, it was more or less 2 things. One, it was like, all right, well, how much is this going to cost? And thankfully, at a young age, when you hop into what I hopped into was a Bandolero race car. They have lawnmower engines in them. It's a young, beginner class. And we bought our car for $3,200, and then we ended up buying a second one for $2,100. And it was a steep ask as a young kid, right? But it was the first time my parents ever saw me motivated to do something that wasn't, sit on the couch and watching cars. So it was a very easy conversation, I guess, to get that going. And I remember my very first lap on the track, I pounded the wall. I didn't know what I was doing. I absolutely completely destroyed the right front of the race car. And I remember the drive home, and my dad said it was like a 45-minute drive. And my dad asked me, he said, look, we could do this, but if we do this, we're going to make you a champion. Or we can go to K1 every other week, and you could do some league stuff there, and you can have fun, but we'll focus on your life. And it took me all about 5 minutes of that drive to say I want to drive race cars, to my dad's disappointment. And it was the best thing I could have done. We bought those cars, $3,200 and $2,100, and sold them both for triple what we bought them for, because we ended up winning three straight championships, state championships, tied for a national title, broke 4 track records, and I think we won in my time in those little cars. I think we won upwards of 50, 60 races before moving up when I was 14. So we found something I was good at, thankfully. I was no longer picking at the grass in the outfield. So it was definitely the right move. And here I am today, 24, and trying to keep moving forward.
Fantastic. So Chris, I'm sure you get the question, people who either want to invest in a car, or they maybe have a family member, or maybe they just want to go fast with their, what formerly was, I guess, a street legal car. Like, what advice do you give them when they say, like, how much is this going to cost me?
Yeah, I mean, like Ryan knows, there's different budgets in racing. Depends on what you want to do. If you want to be a driver, you either had to be really good at a young age, and someone's going to pay for your seat, or you got to have some money. Either way, it's going to cost money to sit down in a big boy race car. For guys that want to get into, that want to do some track days and stuff like that, I mean, it's going to cost, it's going to cost money in tires. It's going to cost money in suspensions, and that's all if you keep it all on the road. Going off the road, it costs exponentially more. So, it's I would say start with a car that you can afford to bust up as you learn to get better. You don't want to go jump into an M8 like Steve does and take that to the track every weekend. It's just not going to be very cost effective. But there's a lot of good cars out there that, like an E46 M3. I'm just coming from BMW world, so this is what I know best. But like an E46 M3, a higher mileage car, it's a great car to go and spend time on the track. It's not a ton of power, but the suspension and handling you can put in that thing will make you a better driver and learn how to set a car up properly without putting it into the wall on your first one, your first go round in there. But that happens too, and that's just part of it. So, I would say start with an inexpensive car first and work your way up to the Porsches and. Fantastic.
Brandi, do you have any thoughts? I mean, you said something about someone investing in a car for you. I mean, how did that go?
Well, he said he was going to do it and didn't, so it didn't go anywhere, and I moved to Vancouver for sure. But it has always been in the back of my mind, and I love this because, obviously any budget is available, but even just what Chris said, to start naming off cars that are ideal for those starter drivers. Just even find your passion. I lately am not doing enough hobbies, so maybe there's still time for me. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. There is.
Well, I remember years ago when I worked for Honda, they had I sold Honda retail, and they I think stripped down a Civic and were selling it for entry-level racers with like nothing on it kind of thing. And I thought that was interesting just because I'm sure people have tuned those things up. But when you're looking at all the racing out there, whether it be car, truck, off-road, NASCAR, Indy, motocross, as someone who's raced vehicles, I mean, how did you determine you want to do one versus another? Like, where did that come from? Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, no, sorry, I was, but no, the biggest thing for me was just, NASCAR was the only real option. We didn't have dirt racing out there, and road racing, there was a few kart tracks. Cal Speed out in Fontana is obviously one that's gone now, but was a prominent one. But truthfully, we had Irwindale Speedway, which is, 20 minutes from my house. We had the Orange Show Speedway, which was 45 minutes from the house. You had the Las Vegas Bull Ring, obviously 3.5, 4 hours away. So there was a lot of options for circle track racing. And, everybody looks at NASCAR, right? NASCAR is the big American motorsport. And it was just something that I always liked. I remember going to my first race back in 2010 with my dad and just experiencing it all and taking it all in. And, it is funny, though, my fuel for racing, ironically, came from monster trucks going to those things. So it's funny that I wound up being a NASCAR driver because, what got me into racing was the complete opposite. So, yeah.
Interesting. So, Chris, I mean, you do a lot of modifications of cars for other people. Do you do any racing yourself in your free time? I mean, is that something that's you're passionate about?
My racing consists of scare rides to customers. So my job is to go and scare the money out of them. Yeah, I'm too, at this age now, I'm a little too old to be out racing professionally. But yeah, so my job here is to take any customers that fly in that want to spend a decent amount of money in upgrades and go take them on scare rides and break an unlimited amount of traffic laws here. So the good thing is I have 0 points on the record, so I haven't been caught yet. Yeah, so my racing consists of that is scaring the money out of guys. But yeah, we've racing in IMSA now. We actually have our teams at a test day today, but we just got done racing at Daytona. We compete against some cars there, and there's been a lot of cross pollination with NASCAR guys and well as IMSA guys and coming over there, and some of them done really, really well. So maybe Ryan, one day we'll see you over here on our side of the track here. But yeah, so we have a pretty good season that just started. So we got one race down at Daytona, and I think our next one is maybe Sebring. But yeah, so my racing consists of street and not getting caught.
Brandi, was there any thoughts there? Any stories? Any misadventures?
Oh, that's what qualifies. I'm golden.
Yeah, I remember years ago I was doing some training with Honda for a new launch of a new car, and the trainer said, "This is not a qualifying round for the F1 team. Like, yeah, do not do this on the track with these cars." So, Brandi, driving's a lot of fun. What's the fastest you've ever driven, and what scares you at high speed?
The fastest. Oh, I can't say I even can think of a number. Definitely over 200, I would say. And I don't know, it's not even the speed that scares me, it's who's driving. So if I trust you as a driver, I absolutely trust the ability, for sure. Now, I want to know the fastest Ryan and Chris have actually done. Probably tame.
Is that 200 miles an hour or kilometers an hour?
Over 200 kilometers an hour. That's like light. We're talking light. I want to hear you guys here. No. And I've been in some fast cars, but nowhere with the ability of letting it go.
Yeah. So, Chris, you scare people for a living in cars. You obviously have some stories.
Yeah, the fastest that I have been is 336 kilometers an hour, or 209 miles an hour on the street.
On the street. Wow. Impressive. Great. And Ryan, I'm assuming you drive. So what was your opinion?
That's the time you didn't get caught.
I think Diane was actually driving. I was a passenger. The fastest I've driven personally is probably about 202, 203.
And what speed scares you? Does it get scary as you get farther up there, or not really?
Honestly, the cars where we drive, that the faster you go, the more planted they are, right? It's the distance and what you have to gauge and stuff because it comes up so fast, right? So there's a spot at our other corporate office in the Bay Area that's a 2 mile straight between lights, and there's no cross streets or traffic. So usually we'll clear the road, and then we get to go, because we have to test some of these cars that we tune, and we remove the top speed governor. We have to test cars from 0 to 100 miles an hour, 0 to 200 miles an hour, back down. So we test braking and suspension and all that stuff. So we'll go out and set up that type of road where we have a 2 mile stretch where there's no cross streets, nobody can pull out. It's actually it's the safest spot to go do that. But yeah, so we do it under a controlled environment.
Fair enough. Ryan, I'm assuming you went fast. What scares you at high speed, but more importantly, what's that number for you?
Yeah, my number is not that number. I think I got clocked at like 198 one time. I think it was either at Talladega or one of the big 2 mile tracks like Michigan or Fontana, something like that. But there's no fear when you're going that fast. I have never been scared by the speed aspect. It's more or less when you get stopped, and that's where people, when everybody else who's going that speed, they're rushing by you. I remember, I'd say the only time I've ever been scared in a race car was Daytona 2022. My good friend and roommate at the time, Maya Snyder, he got turned in the middle of the pack. I was running somewhere in the mid-teens, high teens, just trying to make it to the checkered flag. and he got turned in the middle of the pack. The air got underneath his car, and it sent his car into the air, and he hit the catch fence at 190 miles per hour, and it ripped his car in half. And that was the first time I ever thought I saw somebody die. And luckily, he got out of the car without a scratch. So
wow,
that just shows how safe the racing is. And we just saw another airborne crash yesterday, the Daytona 500. So speed. These planes take off. Jumbo jets, they take off at 160, 170. Race cars, we're going almost 200, and you get a little bit of air under them, and they'll go flying.
Yeah,
fantastic. So since I got a question here around ambitious drivers, what advice do you give the young sort of ex-you or former you, in terms of why do it and what to help them? What have you learned so far that maybe you can add some knowledge to their personal journey as they decide, or their parents say, "What are you thinking?" They decided to get in the car business, like what's in racing.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's always just a game of why do you do it, right? Why do you sacrifice, your time, your effort, your money, everything, to try and chase this goal, right? And there's so many factors that go into it. You're going to have so many more bad days at the track than good ones, because there's 37 other cars on the racetrack at a time usually, and only one of them gets to win. That's the thing with racing. Only one of those guys get to win, and at the end of the day, I've been fortunate to race at some of the higher levels of NASCAR. I've raced in Europe, in road racing series. I've been able to go all over and try different forms of racing. To me, I keep going because of the fact that in 2017, my parents sat me down at the dinner table. We had some sponsors at the time, but when you're a teenager just getting started in racing, at these lower short track levels, it's still mainly your own funds. And my parents were we weren't flush with cash by any means, but we were able to race late models, right? We were able to go run and have our own late model and perform, but we knew it was a very short-sighted endeavor. It was only going to be a 1-year thing, right? We bought our own car and went all out with it, and we knew we were going to have to sell it. And sure enough, in August of 2017, my parents sat me down and they said, once this year's up, we are selling the car. And I said, okay. I mean, my mom's a kindergarten teacher, my dad's a construction worker, right? Like, we're not raking in money. Race winnings help, but it's a couple $100, couple grand, that's it. And so I was like, okay, that's fine. Like, I'll go to college and, pursue a career, and that's it. I knew I've seen friends of mine, people close to me in racing, put their houses on the line to go racing. And I just knew at a young age, I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to put my family through that. If it was up to my dad, he probably would have. That's how much he cared, but I didn't want him to do that. But fortunately, ironically, 3 weeks later, I got the call to go run in the Canaan East, or nowadays the ARCA East schedule. And that opened up a lot of doors. That got me in front of NASCAR. That got me in front of, executives, sponsors, people in the sport. Ran a full season of that. And because of that, we were able to sell our race car for a profit, mind you, because we went and won in that thing too. And I won the last race I ran in that thing, and sold it and never looked back. And so, yeah, the biggest thing is just there's more bad days than good ones, but it's the good ones that make those bad days significantly more worth it.
So, Chris, you've been on the other side, but you guys obviously sponsor teams, I'm assuming. You work with people who have sponsors, and you got the young guy or, early 20s guy who's in racing. What's your advice for them as to how they, do this long term? I'm assuming racing isn't an old man's game, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes along with getting into a seat, but also staying into a seat. Like, a lot of you have to be in really good shape. That's one of, you can't, unfortunately, you have to be, in a certain size, right? Because race cars, especially in ours, we have, 2 cars, 4 drivers, they all share a seat, right? Size, so like the seat size has to be, you have to kind of conform to that. So being in shape is one of them. You're pulling a lot of G's around the track and stuff too. It's hard on the body. But starting young and getting into karting and those sort of things and honing your skills. Once you do that and you can make a name for yourself, then it's money and raising sponsors. So you also got to be kind of a salesman too. You're going to have to go raise capital to go get your seat, and then you got to do it again the next year, right? So maintaining and keeping your seat also takes some sales skills as well. So personality wise, you got to be willing and open to go out and generate sponsors, and what separates yourself from the group is, all the other kind of things that I had mentioned is, you're really good at what you do, and, you have, you're dedicated, you're, whether it's your diet and body, and you're consistent, and, you're not crashing cars. There's a lot that goes into that sort of thing, but, we have a couple guys that, like Jeff Westfall he's our closer driver, and Sean McAllister is our opening driver, and these guys feed off each other really well. One's really good at qualifying, and one's really good at keeping or maintaining a lead at the end. So, you got to find out what kind of driver you're going to be, and if you're going to do road racing, obviously, because we switch drivers every race. Each one gets to do a stint. Whereas in Ryan's racing, he's in the car the whole time. So, each racing and type of series that you do is going to be different. And the budget that you're going to do, whether it's SRO, like the Pirelli and the World Challenge events, or IMSA, which, we're in the high side of sports car racing. So there's a lot of other ways to get into racing, and work your way up to the next level. So, but I think you're going to jump in and go racing a car in IMSA your first go around is probably not going to happen.
So,
no matter how much money.
So what do you say to those sponsors who say, "Hey, I know you need sponsors for your race car"? What do you say to them to convince them why that makes sense for them? Like what's in their mind?
Yeah,
like, how would you advise someone to get a sponsor?
Yeah, it's going to be the car, right? There's the car itself. Like, we've gone through a few different cars over the last 5 years, right? We won the championship in an Audi R8, and then Audi said they didn't want to be in North American racing anymore, the sports car series. So we had to go then find another car. So what did we do? We went into the Lamborghini Huracan, because that's similar chassis and everything to the Audi. Well, we found out that every time that car gets crashed or bumped or anything, it's really expensive. And we're like, yeah, we don't know if we want to stay in the Lamborghini anymore, because we got spun out twice, and each crash cost us over $500,000. So then we got into the Porsche, the GT4 RS Porsche, and that car is very fragile. You get bumped and the suspension alignment goes out. So now we're back. This is going to be our first full year? Yeah, second full year in the new BMW G82 M4, which BMW is our high performance brand. So we're kind of back in exactly where we need to be. We actually won our final, we won our race, we podiumed our final 2 races last year. We have a great start going on to the season this year. So that is what helps sponsors, right? Is what have you done, and how is my car going to be viewed? How is my are I going to be on the podium and get the extra airtime? I mean, if you're a really bad team, the channel or the TV is not going to be following you around. They're going to be talking about the guy. So and because Steve Dinan is Steve, we get a lot of airtime as well. So it's about airtime on TV and visibility and stuff like that. And I guess that's we have a really good reputation there. So
fantastic. Well, Ryan, I know you're looking for sponsors, shockingly, for your race car. I mean, what has been successful for you in the past? But more importantly, what's your advice to someone who maybe is thinking about sponsoring a team and was not sure on that? Like, what's in it for them?
Yeah, I mean, kind of to piggyback off what Chris says, obviously putting yourself in a position to run up front and be consistent near the front is important. And that's why, over the last 2 years, I've really revitalized a lot of kind of how I go about my career. I spent from 2019 to 2022, I spent my career driving for smaller teams in NASCAR, which was a phenomenal opportunity. I was able to work with some great groups. I had TikTok on a race car. I had a one-off sponsorship with Alvin Kamara. I had, we did a collaboration with Best Buy. So there were some really cool deals there that kickstarted a lot of what I am. And like I mentioned, that TikTok deal, I was 19 years old when I signed that agreement, and that brought a huge company into the sport of auto racing, and that helps you get in the door. And for me, at the end of 2022, I kind of realized I kind of had to take a step back and just say, okay, I've been doing this for 4 years now. I need to start running up front, and this is, me being, without any disrespect to the team I was with, we just weren't going to get there. And I needed to take some changes, even though my budget isn't there to go and run with, a Gibbs or Junior Motorsports or Penske, SHR, now Haas. There's opportunities in other series. You know what I mean? I hopped into the truck series, ran a few one-off races there with a smaller team, not a big team, but not as small as some of the other opportunities. We immediately found some good success. Ran top 10 my second ever start in the truck series, and then last year made the venture over to Europe and ran in the NASCAR Euro series, and that is a phenomenal series over there. It's a great show. Everybody, not only do they bring kind of like the NASCAR style product to fans, but those fans show up. I mean, Brands Hatch, we had over, I want to say 55,000 fans in attendance at Brands Hatch. It's their largest event on the calendar for that facility. And my title sponsor, Critical Path Security, they were on for every single race, and we ran up front. We were consistently getting category podiums. And I'm an oval guy, right? So for me to go over there and, hop into a road course series was a challenge, to say the least. But the fact we were able to run, in that front half, in that top 10, challenging for top 5 on several occasions, that was a big step. And like I said, being able to stand on the podium for a category, that was also a huge deal. So putting that performance on the track helps a lot, but also on the back end, with Critical Path Security, I'm going to name them again because they're kind of like my main group. They are B2B. You know what I mean? They want to meet people. They want to network. They want to do all that stuff. It's a lot of it is about trying to, leverage me as an entity, right? The car is cool, but, at the end of the day, if I want my program to be that if, something catastrophic happens, I blow a tire going into turn number 1 and we completely bend the race car, we still have met all the obligations and exceeded those obligations and those objectives, I guess you could say. To the point where, like I said, bend the car turn 1, it's not even part of the deal anymore. It doesn't matter.
Right. There will be details in the description below, not only on Chris, but also on Ryan and, of course, Brandi. So, Chris, obviously you get sponsors. What is in it for your sponsors? Like, how do you roll with that? Like, what's in it for them? What do they get out of it?
A tax write-off. Really, that's what, yeah, no, it is. A lot of our sponsors here, we have like Excel and Menlo. One of our main sponsors is a venture capitalist, and him and his partner, they own quite a few corporations and some big ones that I know you've heard of. So for them, if it costs them $5 million a year to keep a car on the track, as a sponsor, then it's a write-off that they get to participate in, maybe on the Gentleman's Series, or when we put in an extra driver, because they both drive, they get to drive and participate as well. So you get to participate in a big series as well as have a tax write-off for their corporation. So really, that's that. There is no money when you win a race. There's no check. There's no grand prize or anything like that. You get a trophy and a hat for Michelin, and then you get to take a champagne bath. So, but yeah, for the sponsors, really, it's a tax write-off. Either they got to write it off somewhere. So if you have big corporations or multi-billion-dollar companies or multi-million-dollar companies, depending on what type of how big you're going to go, either they're going to give the money to the government, or they can go have and be a part of a cool racing program. So really, that's what's in it for the sponsors, and then obviously the visibility to fans and stuff like that. They go to the events, and so that's going to be the main benefit there.
So what what's the starting point? Like if I'm sponsoring a team, like what does the money look like? Like if I'm sponsoring Ryan, or for example, if I'm sponsoring you, maybe Ryan, you can speak to it. Like what would be sort of the minimum sponsorship you'd be looking for? Hey, Larry. Go ahead, Ryan.
Oh,
yeah.
My apologies.
Like you're looking for sponsors. Like what kind of check are you looking for? Like what does that look like?
Oh man. Like Chris said, this takes millions, right?
Yeah.
It takes a lot of money, especially if you want to go compete at a high level. There's various areas you can go. Obviously, each team has their own price, right? So it changes from series to series. It changes from team to team. It really just kind of comes back to what the objective is, right? If you want to go run up front, lead every lap, it's going to cost a pretty penny. I mean, one of my favorite quotes of all time is, money buys speed. How fast do you want to
go? So, Brandi, I guess it costs a few dollars to get into your racing dream there, huh? Yeah. So, Chris, like if someone, it's like all these sponsors, you have a number. Like what what would it take?
I mean, there's a few as a sponsor. I think our minimum is somewhere in the $100,000 price tag for the season. But then if you wanted to be a driver, I believe the going rate right now for a driver is somewhere for the season close to $1 million. So if you wanted to go race at IMSA right now, and we're in the GT4 car, then you'd have to be somewhere at $750,000 to $1.1 million to have a seat for the season. Then you got to raise that again. So if you figure that you need it's $100,000 sponsors, you probably want to go after the $200,000 and $400,000 type sponsors, so that you only have to get a couple of those each year. So that you can maintain your seat and then do it all over again. Now there are some drivers that have that don't have to go out and raise the capital. They have somebody that will pay for them every single time, and that just would be one corporation. So we have in our scenario, we have both. We have a driver that's paid for all the time, and then we have a driver that raises sponsorship money.
So is that the responsibility of that driver?
You have to be one hell of a driver to just have a guaranteed seat every season. So, yeah.
So is that the responsibility of the driver who's raising the money to raise the money, or does he have help in that regard?
It depends on the setup. Some drivers are really good sales guys. Some will have their team. Some will have friends and family that they'll hire to go do that for them. Because it'll take some cold calling, and it takes some some obviously contract negotiating skills and stuff like that. And so everybody's a little bit different. It's if it was me driving and racing, I'd be raising the capital and the sponsors myself. So that's why I train our sales, the vice president of sales here. So that's what we do. And Ryan, I was going to say, the question that I train my guys to ask when a customer calls in is, do you want to go faster, handle better, or both? And how much, and what's your budget? Right?
Exactly.
So I can, if you have a certain budget, I can make you handle a little bit better and go a little bit faster. If you have this budget, well, we can turn your street car into a race car.
So Larry, I see you're on the call. Did you want to raise money for one of these? Oh, I guess he's off now.
Absolutely.
You got $100,000 you want to donate? I hear there's a tax write-off in it for you.
You don't need it. Listen, we must have had a free race car driver school, because all my lock guys in Trenton were known to do 200 miles an hour and maneuver through a parking.
That's the way to go.
Absolutely. So I got one more question. What do you think the future of racing is? I mean, I hear there's a lot of talk about EV racing and hybrid racing and hydrogen and this, that, and a bag of chips. What do you think the future of racing is? Let's start with Ryan. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is as technology, continues to evolve, right? You see the latest and greatest with NASCAR. They've adopted the next gen platform on the Cup Series side, and I know that they're working on trying to have all that, have that platform kind of begin to trickle down into the Xfinity and Truck Series, and heck, that's even starting to affect some of the regional tours. I know the NASCAR Euro Series also, like I mentioned, the series I ran in, they just recently adopted the 5-speed sequential gearbox. Last year, they were still running the H-pattern 4-speed. So they're starting to do a few things to kind of get back to get closer to the Cup cars. But, as technology evolves, hybrid tech, all that stuff, obviously things are going to continue to be fluid and change as time goes on. I know NASCAR just debuted their EV prototypes, and they now have 2 of the 3 lead manufacturers getting behind it. They have Ford debuted their Mach-E Mustang, and then Chevy debuted their Blazer, their electric Blazer. So it's kind of interesting to see kind of the direction that's going to go. And I've, obviously there's been speculation on what that series is going to be. I know they've gone on, and said that they plan on doing some exhibition races down the line. For me, as a race car driver, If it goes fast, I want to drive it, right? I don't care if it makes noise or not, right? You know, if an electric vehicle is able to produce 1,000 horsepower to the tires, I'm going to drive that thing. I take that all day. I want 1,000 horsepower. Make it hard to drive.
Yeah, there was that. I think it's an electric Charger or Challenger they came out with, and they're piping the sound out of it like there's an engine. I was kind of laughing about that.
I'm not a fan of that.
Because I think it was Bugatti has a new 16-cylinder, and they had a teaser video online where they have the sound of the engine, which I thought was much more interesting. But what do you think, Chris?
Yeah, well, speaking of the pumping the sound, BMW's actually been pumping sound through the speakers of the cars for a few years now, so it's nothing new in our world. But the thing is, I don't think that's going full EV racing is going to happen really anytime soon in any of the bigger series. I think it's going to be tough. I mean, right now we're obviously their classes are all, we have BOPs or we're getting, we're X at a certain amount of horsepower so that the playing field's level, right?
Right.
Like our race car makes almost 100 horsepower. Our race car makes 300 horsepower less than our street car that we tune and put all of our modifications on, right? So our street car makes 760 horsepower out of a 3-liter twin turbo 6-cylinder engine with our power package. And our street cars is power limited to 450. So, so we're, so how would you do that with electric motors and stuff and weight and all that? Right now, it's a lot easier to calculate and keep cars even with an engine, with a gasoline or whatever type of fuel type of engine that you're running. So, and then the longevity of races, right? How do what would happen with the 24 hours of Daytona? We have an endurance series within our series, like the 6 hours and 12 hours at Sebring, the 24 hours of Daytona, the batteries and that sort of thing is not quite there yet, unless you did full battery swaps and that sort of thing. So I think it'd be hard to keep a series like even like it is right now, but it will take time, right? Like, back, it's IMSA took a while to make sure that the cars were all running even. And so I think that it'll come and EVs will start trickling in smaller series, and they figure out how to really get these things under control. And then once that kind of becomes exciting, you know what I mean? But the sound, growing up with monster trucks,
exactly,
it's like what sound do you hear? It would be one of the quietest type of environments that you've ever been in, as it just goes by and you just have tire noise, right?
Yeah.
And braking, tires and brakes, which don't sound all that good unless you're, maybe drifting a car or something like that. I think drifting would probably be with electric motors and stuff would probably be would probably take off faster and easier to do than sports car or oval track or racing. So
they started developing more drift cars actually. I've seen that, and it makes more sense too because instantaneous power, right? So you would think, it would spin the tires. But
you mean even Knievel, no electric motorcycle?
There's a few. I've seen a lot of electric motorcycles. I actually could see that one taking off too. But
there's actually a company, Damon, out of where I used to live in Vancouver, and they have an AI technology to avoid accidents, which I thought was kind of interesting. I will eventually do an interview with the founder, but it was kind of interesting because it was a combination of electric and accident avoidance, which I thought was really interesting. But I agree with you. Like, I don't think you're going to see an elimination of sound, but I thought it was really interesting that Chrysler was trying to do that, or Stellantis, with that sound. I was like, that's kind of, I don't know. It just seemed, it's kind of like the Hummer. If you're looking for something that's an EV, that's probably not, doesn't make a lot of sense, but it was definitely interesting. It's like an EV tank, which probably makes more sense because it's stealthy, right? But you're still going to hear the thing.
60 in 3 seconds.
Yeah. A little hard to hit.
Yeah.
What do you think, Brandi?
I'm with Ryan. If it goes fast, I'm all about it. And I've always, especially as EVs come out, people are very funny about the EV vehicles. I am an EV owner. I do have a Mustang Mach-E. And when the debate goes on, for me, it's, we have so much of what our unconscious bias has tied to a fast car, right? So we think it should sound like a car going fast when it goes fast. But I'll tell you, there is nothing like merging out of my cul-de-sac in an EV. There is nothing that even compares to it. If I want to be there, I'm there like that. And to me, that when I think about speed and people who love speed, it has shocked me how much controversy there has been over the fact that it's an EV. When I am speed, so for me, my ego doesn't stop me from the sound it makes. It's really about it's about how fast it goes and how I can get there that fast.
We're actually doing another EV. I'd be interested. We're doing another EV debate show next month.
Sorry, I will say my spouse also. Him and his buddy crashed their dirt bikes. They actually came around the corner. They were trailing and literally went into each other, and they kind of laughed because neither could hear the other one coming. And so, not to say that if you can't hear yours, you won't be able to hear theirs either. I'm not saying it would have prevented it, but we kind of had a chuckle about how that actually would have went down.
Yeah, we're doing an EV debate show next month, just so you know. So if you're on either side of that, let me know.
Yeah, the one thing about EV cars that's been the big discussion is they go fast in a straight line. They handle horribly.
Yeah, because they're so heavy.
Yeah, they handle like nobody. So until I drove a Porsche Taycan Turbo S, okay, that car. If you want an EV car that can do it all, I mean that actually handles like a Porsche and drives like a Porsche. The Taycan Turbo, any of the Taycan, that car can handle. I actually made myself car sick as a driver.
Oh, wow.
Because the instant torque and the lateral G's of what that car can do coming in and out of a corner is phenomenal. So
I learned something.
If you have an opportunity and you want to drive a fast electric vehicle that can also corner very fast and brake very well, the Taycan is an absolute monster in all categories.
Yeah, I learned through doing a review of a Lucid that you shouldn't shoot camera footage from the passenger seat. And I'm never doing that again. But yeah, I did learn a few things about speed and G's and shooting video. So yeah, I agree. I think Porsche did it right. I haven't had a chance to drive the new Macan electric, but I also hear they have a hybrid 911 that they're pushing against the GT3. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, and I've driven a lot of cars, a lot of really, really fast, expensive cars. I truly believe Porsche makes the best car from the factory, second to none. Whatever your budget is, if you want a driver's car, like to go out and drive every day, but also they can keep up with pretty much everything out there, whatever your budget is, Porsche is the best car in that category. So,
yeah, we actually were at SEMA a year and a half ago, and there was a guy he'd made a Gullwing Mercedes, the original one, electric, and I was like, I was like, I don't know about that decision.
Yeah, you're going to see a lot of hot rod conversions, I think, with electric motors now coming out. And I think that if done right, they can be pretty cool. But sound part is always going to be missing for me. I'm an engine guy, not a motor guy. Yeah.
So we're almost out of time. Time for a final thought round. Ryan, any final thoughts?
No, just appreciate being on. Had a good time talking cars and racing, and thank you for having me.
No problem. Brandi, any thoughts?
Definitely, but I do want to say I love. Obviously, I love the discussion and the topic because it is under talked about, and so this was really great to be on. I also love the fact that Chris mentioned about the branding side of things. So, there's two parts to any of the sponsors, and that's what my takeaway is here is, the sponsorship that you can attain, but also what I can do as the new company, if I decided to go that way, what I can do to put the spin on it and how much is relied on both sides. And the marketing side, it is all sales. So kind of branding yourself and going after somebody that's branded themselves well.
Thanks for that. Chris, thoughts?
Yeah, no, it's my second time on here. I had, as good of a time as I did before. We've grown a lot since then, so I've been extremely busy, and want to continue growing. I'll probably, when we get off, I'll probably connect with Ryan a little bit and see if our paths can cross in the future, and maybe he wants to start steering the wheel in opposite directions. So
I got to do a little bit this year. I can turn right. I got a couple podiums on road courses. I'm learning.
Yeah. No, it's we may be opening up another car in the future, so we have a lot of cool stuff going on here. You know, and it's hearing his story and stuff. It's kind of, you know, we're self-made guys all here. You know, we've grown this company from, you know, I think the last time when we first met, I think we had like 20 or 30 dealers nationwide. Now we have 110 maybe. You know, we've grown a lot over 5 years, and going to continue doing that. But you know, we have two different, you know, divisions, and racing and the street car division. So you know, it's good to connect and have, you know, someone that races cars on here and someone that runs a business on here. So you know, I'm kind of in the middle of these guys, and you know, just happy to participate and give a different outlook on stuff. So you know, as always, thank you, man.
We did launch this year a new show about fixed stops, which is live every Friday. We are looking for sponsors for that show. It's affordable, and of course, you would get, as Brandi and Larry can attest, you would get qualified leads every single week, and it's supporting the AutoHub show's new fixed stop show. We are sold out of sponsors for the main show for season 6, but that show is available. And if you are interested in the one-on-one show, which is a recorded show I do every week, that is another way to really stand out as a company, and there is no cost to that show. Let me repeat that one more time. If you want to be on the one-on-one show, there is no cost, but we are looking for sponsors to power the fixed stop side for 2025. Larry, any thoughts? I know you don't have any. You're muted.
I do. I just happened to see Richard Petty and his son Kyle. And if you think about it, think about the variations of cars in the last 50, 60 years. Funny cars, they look like street cars. Racing's never going to go away, and I'm sure they'll develop a niche with some of these electric cars, although they're going to have to stimulate the sound, because I think part of the excitement is hearing that roar when these cars go by. Right? You don't go to a Who concert to hear Pete Townsend play more than one song acoustically. You want the noise.
Yeah.
Understood. That's what was the interesting thing about that Stellantis, is the noise actually comes out of the tailpipe of the car, which is kind of interesting as an electric car. But the reviews have not been good.
Yeah.
Definitely not. Well, thanks for taking the time today. I really appreciate it.
Guys.
Yeah. And have yourself a great week, and happy President's Day and Family Day if you're in the Canadian market. Bye for now.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Hey guys.